Okay, hello everybody, SlimKirby here. I'm going to try to get through Mario Party 3 as quick as possible. You guys know the drill, so let's go ahead and get started.
Whoa, hold on there a minute, Slim. Why are you trying to speak through what is undoubtedly the best Mario Party game?
Damn it. Hey, Teran. What's up, man? To be perfectly honest, Mario Party 3 is not one of my favorite Mario Party games, and I wanted to get through it as quickly as possible. And I thought I could get by without you noticing if I did this fast enough.
I thought as much, and let me tell you something, I'm not gonna let you get away with that, especially after your harsh treatment of Rules Land in the last video.
Ugh, Rules Land is not a freaking board!
Yes, it is.
Fine, you can join me on this video if you really want to, but just keep your mouth shut and accept that Mario Party 2 is the best Mario Party game.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is! Ugh. Everybody, I'd like to give a warm welcome to KingKienzan. His opinion might be inferior to everyone else's, but I trust you guys. He is a great friend of mine, and he's going to be a great inclusion to this weekend of Mario Party 3.
Hey, screw you, man.
Hey, fight me IRL, bro! Before the ending of the Nintendo 64, Hudson Soft and Nintendo tried to release one last Mario Party game before moving on to the GameCube, and that game was in the form of Mario Party 3. Like Mario Party 2, I was really excited for this game to come out, especially with the prospect of so many new minigames, 2 new characters for the Mario Party roster, and a brand new duel mode where you could battle your opponents with common Mario enemies and characters. In a way, I was actually more excited for this game than I was for Mario Party 2. However, when I finally got the game, my enthusiasm for Mario Party 3 didn't last in the same way that it did for the first two. I didn't think it was a bad game by any means, and I had the same amount of fun with it that I did with any other Mario Party game, but there was just something about this game that didn't have the same lasting impact. So whenever I go back to the Nintendo 64 Mario Party for a random board playthrough, it's usually on a very rare circumstance that I choose Mario Party 3. However, there is still plenty of magic in this game, and I intend on going through this game just like I would any other Mario Party game for this series. So without further delay, let's get into the minigames of Mario Party 3. My only stipulation for the minigame list this time is the item games will not be included for the sheer fact that they are only one-player minigames for a single item, and the games themselves usually only last about 1 second. Story mode games and the unlockable rare minigames outside of the boards are also not included either for being extra features. Dual minigames this time around are perfectly acceptable though, however. So, let's move on to the worst list. Honorable mention, Game Guy minigames. Okay, so I am going to make another special case with the Game Guy minigames because they honestly feel more like board events to me. And not only that, if I actually included these games on the list, they would take 4 spots on the worst list because I think everybody in their right mind hates Game Guy. All of Game Guy's minigames are games of chance, so there is no real skill in knowing how you are going to do until the point where you win coins or lose everything. As far as the actual games are concerned, as casino games, I do like all of them, and they are all epic in their own little way. The problem with these games, though, is whenever you land on a Game Guy space, you are forced into giving all of your coins away, no questions asked, and also forced into playing one of the games as well. You have no choice in the matter, and it's a surefire way to pretty much lose everything on one single turn. I can't tell you how many times I had over 150 coins in a board playthrough just to land on Game Guy and lose all of my coins in the process. It is so freaking annoying and quite easily the worst mechanic of Mario Party 3. Why force the player into playing a luck-based game and not give them the option to at least? Whenever I drive by or see a casino, I don't automatically go there and spend all of my money just because it's there. I want to save my money so I can actually pay my student loans, or God forbid get a new freaking video game every now and then. But anyway, due to the nature of these games, I didn't feel like including them on the actual list, but because they are quite notorious, I do think they deserved at least some sort of mention. Number 10, The Beat Goes On. I feel like they should change the name of this game to The Beat Drags On, because that's really the only problem I have with this game. In this game, each player is required to memorize an ongoing series of button inputs, with each player adding one more input to the list. If you fail to repeat the sequence, you will be eliminated from the game, and the game goes on until there is only one player remaining. However, the pacing for this game is completely awful. It's so freaking slow, and there's only 3 buttons to choose from, A, B, and Z. And while I do think the game is more memory intensive than its cousin, Move to the Music from Mario Party 2, I think the fact that it's only 3 buttons actually makes it a little easier. Not only that, but before your turn, unless you are one of the first 3 to go, you have to sit through 3 other people taking their turns, so you should be very familiar with the tune leading up into the newest notes. Another thing I dislike is the fact that once you get through 2 lines of notes, if there are more than 1 person left, the game ends in a draw, so you pretty much sat through a 3-minute minigame with no winner or coins being handed out. This game just drags on so freaking much, and like I said, is the only reason why this game even made it on this list. It's just so long, boring, and it's a waste of what would honestly be a pretty solid minigame concept.
Come on, The Beat Goes On is an awesome minigame.
Hey, I thought I told you to be quiet over there. Number 9, Motor Rooter. You should probably be able to tell from my list now that one of the things I hate most is when an otherwise awesome minigame gets screwed over by bad physics and controls, and Motor Rooter could be the best example of that in this game. You and your opponent go on a wild death race through a tube filled with electricity, and the goal is to reach the very end of the track first. If you get hit by electricity, you get stunned and slowed for a brief period of time, but there are also boosters you can use to catch up with your competition. The worst part about this game is that you move with the control stick, and unlike Sonic the Hedgehog 2 special stages, you don't have full control over your character. You just use the control stick to move 1 lane over at a time. You also move extremely fast, so sometimes you can move 2 lanes over at once when you only mean to move over 1 lane. This normally won't be as frustrating, but the boost panels only occupy 1 lane, and when the electricity comes into play, the walls only have 1 lane of freedom as well. And you could quite literally be on the opposite side of where you need to be, but because the movement is so inaccurate, you may end up missing the booster or the opening very easily. So as a result, you get a very frustrating minigame when all the developers had to do was just give full control over your character. It's quite a shame when you really think about it. Number 8, MPIQ. I love a good game of trivia when I actually know what the subject is, and while I do know a lot about Mario Party, this intelligence quiz of Mario Party is not exactly a good implementation of a trivia-based minigame. While there are some questions about certain characters, certain board events of the game, and the current standings of the ongoing game in the background, when it asks what character is one Deep Bloober Sea the most, I'm asking myself, why the hell would I know that? Did the game expect me to study my in-game statistics before I started playing Mario Party 3? I can see it asking stuff like, who has the most stars right now, or who has the most coins, because those are things you should be paying attention to. But some of the questions this game asks are just really stupid and not fair. Especially if you have your friends over and they have no idea what stuff you have done on your own cartridge.
Now, Slim, I respect your opinion and everything, but let me show you the true way to play MPIQ.
Number 7, Baby Bowser Broadside. I really hate when a 2 vs 2 minigame appears on this list, because in the past 2 Mario Party games, there was really only one bad minigame of this variety. In this game, we get treated to Baby Bowser Broadside, a game where all 4 players fire cannons at a Baby Bowser target in the middle of a tower, while being on the outskirts of the tower itself. While you are firing, the tower is constantly rotating, so you'll need to keep readjusting your shots so you continue firing at the target. Every now and then there will be small barriers that block your shots, so you'll need to take that into consideration as well. I purely don't like this game because everything is constantly moving and it just seems so difficult to continuously fire at the target. Plus, I don't feel like the camera really does this game justice as well, because for the first 15 seconds of the game, the people in front will probably have the advantage because the tower hasn't started completely rotating yet. It just feels like this game would have worked better if all players would have been behind the same wall, and the Bowser target would have been the only thing moving, and you would have had free range over your crosshair as well. But woulda, coulda, shoulda. At the end of the day, I don't like this game. Number 6, Crazy Cogs. You know, do I really need to say anything about this one? Yeah, moving on. Number 5. Oh, okay, fine. Crazy Cogs is the sequel of Mario Party 2's Shock Drop or Roll. I mean, that's pretty much what this is. There's no more rolling cylinder over a bunch of electricity, just a moving and shifting gear controlled by the single player with a barrage of bullet bills falling down on the team of 3. However, this is arguably more difficult than the Mario Party 2 equivalent. Bullet bills are falling down constantly, and just as the team of 3 can figure out how to move properly, the solo player can be an absolute dick and switch up the controls, possibly knocking one of the players into the bullet bill's blast. The only thing the team of 3 has to work with are the shadows of the bullet bills, and that's really about it. They can fight the moving gear just fine, but with so many bullet bills and the movement of the gear solely in the single player's hands, there's only so much you can do as the team of 3. Just hope that the solo player can't efficiently torture you to death. Number 5, Merry Go Chomp. I got a little bit of heat for placing Bowser's Big Blast in the top 10 worst list of last week under the sole reason that I had said that Day at the Races was a better game. I figured I should take a moment and explain myself here, since Merry Go Chomp is essentially the same exact category as the aforementioned luck-based games. At the end of the day, luck-based games are completely evil and the bane of many people's existences when it comes to Mario Party, rightfully so. I've always seen the minigames as a means for balancing the luck-based aspect of the board gameplay, so if you get a bad roll or are unable to make much progress because the other players seem to have a vendetta against you, you can use the minigames as a means to catch up or score a from-behind victory at the very end of the game when bonus stars come into play. However, luck-based games tend to screw with that mindset because they quite literally throw all skill out the window and give you no control over your fate. No control whatsoever. Whether you are talking about Bowser's Big Blast, Day at the Races, Game Guy's Minigames, or in the case of this game, Merry Go Chomp, you are at the mercy of the RNG and there is no way of knowing what the results will bring until the game is actually over. Because of this, from a technical standpoint, all of these games belong at the very bottom of the list, or very top of the worst list, but I don't want these lists to be too predictable, and there are some minigames that developers just truly screwed up on. Also, despite being luck-based games, there are some games that are still somewhat enjoyable and unique, despite being luck-based, which is why if I had the choice between Day at the Races and Bowser's Big Blast, I'd choose Day at the Races. I may have no control over my character while they are racing, but I can at least enjoy myself and root for the character to win. At the end of the day, though, if I was doing a top 11 or top 12 worst, you would have probably seen Day at the Races on the list anyway, so it's not like the game was really that much more enjoyable. Besides, it all comes down to personal preference anyway. But getting back to the point, sorry for the tangent, Merry Go Chomp is once again pretty much a spiritual sequel to Bowser's Big Blast. You jump on a colored platform, and once all of the players have done that, a Chain Chomp chooses which platform to munch on, leaving your fate in the hands of the Chain Chomp's RNG. The game, as you might expect, goes on until only one player remains. Another thing that sucks about this game is that if the Chain Chomp manages to pick the empty platform, the cycle will not reset and he will just pick a different color. So once you lock into a color, make sure that is the color you are willing to stick with, because you are stuck with it until the Chain Chomp gets fed. Number 4, Stacked Deck. And we're right back to another luck-based minigame in the form of Stacked Deck. In this game, the goal is to flip over cards. Whenever you flip over a Toad card, you are safe and go to the end of the line, while if you flip over a Baby Bowser card, you are knocked out. The last player remaining is the winner. In addition to Toad and Baby Bowser, there are also Boo cards, where if a Boo is turned over, the entire field will be shuffled as well as the player order. I guess the thing that gets me about this minigame is just the fact that the chances of you getting knocked out are forever changing throughout the entire event, and there is no way of knowing your fate until you take a look at the card. Despite what people may think, there is no way of knowing which cards are which until you ground pound, which reminds me, why couldn't this have been a memory game instead? It just feels like this could have been much better utilized, but instead, we're treated to yet another luck-based minigame. Number 3, Bowser Toss. The Nintendo 64 capitalized on the idea of taking Bowser by the tail and tossing him extremely far. This game goes as far as to turn it into an actual Olympic event, like the hammer toss. However, the problem with this game comes from the fact that you have to concern yourself with two things: extremely hard button mashing and getting the perfect angle, because the person who throws Bowser furthest in this duel game will be the winner. The button mashing isn't necessarily the problem, but in finding the perfect angle. You may have some difficulty with just how fidgety the N64 controller stick is. If you have Bowser pointed too high, it doesn't matter how hard you mash that button, because distance is the most important factor here. Because of this, getting a good balance between the two is key, but getting that key is just extremely awkward here. Number 2. Bounce and Trounce. I love a good game of bumper balls, but Bounce and Trounce is a classic minigame turned evil in the form of this game. In this game, Mario and his friends are no longer balancing themselves on giant rolling balls, but taking control of hoppity hops that can bounce extremely high and allow you to attack your opposition by spinning and knocking them back. Whenever you are struck by a spin attack, you need to make sure you can still recover, because as time goes on, the platforms will start dropping until only one block of space remains, which pretty much means whoever gets struck at that point is not going to be coming back. What makes this game annoying to me is not the fact that it's a disastrous version of one of my favorite minigames. If anything, this minigame excited me at first, but the fact that there is such little space to move and you have to get the spin attack just right for it to work properly. Most of the time, you'll see all 4 players bouncing up to the middle, performing a spin attack all at once, and then one random player will get lucky and not be impacted by the blast. It's just so inaccurate and frustrating, and left me disappointed for what could have been a really awesome take on a classic game. Number 1. Cheep Cheep Chase. If Bounce and Trounce was the crappy parody of a good minigame, Cheep Cheep Chase is the crappy parody of a bad one. This minigame in a nutshell. Let's take all the things that make Skateboard Scamper a bad minigame and apply it to a new one with even worse mechanics. Much like in Skateboard Scamper 2, you are being chased by a giant enemy, in this case a Cheep Cheep. And instead of skateboarding, or even waterboarding in this case, you are swimming. You mash the A button to swim, and whenever you see a bomb ahead of you, you must dive under the bomb to avoid it. Like Skateboard Scamper, the camera is in a fixed position in the middle of the auto-scrolling stage, so there is no way you can swim faster than the middle of the screen, which means you and your opponents will pretty much be at the same exact position if you are doing everything right. So once again, the game pretty much comes down to a mass spammage of the A button at the very end of the game. However, what makes this game a step below Skateboard Scamper is the fact that actually getting to the end of the game is already a huge undertaking. You need to be mashing A at pretty much all times, even when you use the B button to dive under the bombs. If you don't do this properly or fluidly, you will get hit and you will no doubt lose, whether it's because the Cheep Cheep caught up with you, or you just won't have enough power to catch up with your foes. Usually the former, though. This is a huge shame because of the 3 games. I do feel like the problems of both Skateboard Scampers were at least tweaked to a very small degree, enough to make it seem like you could actually make some headway and get ahead of your competition here. It definitely wasn't fixed, but it was retooled a bit, and I do give the game credit for that. However, because of this game's massive other problems, not only do I take that credit back, but I also spit on it, because they turned a game with a cool concept and bad execution to a game with even worse execution. And that's why I say Cheep Cheep Chase is the worst minigame of Mario Party 3.
I couldn't help but notice that there was a distinct lack of handline and sinker on this list.
Oh, come on. As bad as that game can be, it's not the worst. Just learn how to use the damn controls.
Oh yeah? Why don't you learn to accept that Mario Party 3 is the best Mario Party?
Never! However, even with these awful minigames, Mario Party 3 did have some jewels as well. So stay tuned for my top 10 best Mario Party 3 minigames.